Conditions may apply by Cinnamon Pine Cones. Read by Distracted by Books. Chapter 160. Cards on the Table. We need to talk, kid, Eraser said as he casually leaned on the door frame. He felt the color drain from his face. We're not mad at you. We just need to get your side of the story, he added quickly. Come on, he said as he nodded his head and gestured for him to follow. Mike was already sitting on the couch, wrapped up in a blanket with Bastard on his lap, and he gave them a smile as he entered behind Eraser. Eraser sat down in the armchair adjacent to Mike, so Izuku shuffled to the other side of the couch and sat down stiffly, waiting for someone else to broach the topic. Are you all right, kiddo? Mike asked. Yeah, I'm fine, Izuku responded without even thinking about the question. Neither of them looked convinced by that, but they didn't push the matter. Can you tell us about how you met All Might? Eraser asked. This felt wrong to talk about. He had spent the last month or so under the impression that speaking about this was a death sentence to everyone involved. But the damage was already done. He had caused enough issues. The least he could do was answer their questions. So he did his best to force the words out. Yeah, there was this sludge guy that came out of the sewer when I was walking home, and he tried to attack me. Well, he did attack me, but he tried to wear me like a meat suit, I guess. I tried to stop him, but he was just all goop, so I couldn't do much until I ended up scratching his eye. That seemed to be the only solid part of him. But then All Might showed up and blasted him away and put him in a bottle. He was going to leave, but I was being stupid and I wanted to ask him something. He tried to jump away, but I had grabbed him, which was stupid. I don't know why I did that, but we landed on a roof and he just deflated, for lack of a better word. He trailed off as they both tensed. Go on, kiddo, Mike prompted after a second. He looked back and forth between the two of them until Eraser nodded, prompting him to continue as well. Okay. I asked my question and he left after that. He saw them both tense again, but he continued. But then I saw explosions and I didn't know what was going on, but it sounded like Bakugo. So I jumped down the fire escapes to street level to see what was happening, and it was Bakugo and the same sledge guy from before. I don't know how he got out, but no one was helping him. They were all just standing around, but he was going to suffocate. So I threw my backpack at his eye, and he backed off enough for Bakugo to breathe. I ran over and did my best to free his arms and told him to aim for the eyes. So he did, and that was enough to get him off of Bakugo. And the heroes started to come closer, so I ran away, and I guess All Might was still there because he stopped me and offered me his quirk because he thought I had the heart of a hero or something. I don't know. He finished the tale inelegantly. For all the reassurances of them not being mad at him, they looked awfully mad right now. He scooted away from them a little and tried to mask it as readjusting, but he was far too tense to fool them. Kimchi didn't seem to be fooled either because she had crawled her way into his lap. She reminded him of DJ. She was so sweet and fluffy. He busied his hands petting her long fur. Okay, that lines up with what he told us. Can you tell us about your relationship after that? Eraser asked in a calculated, nonchalant tone. Well, I didn't say yes right away, which I guess you probably already knew that. He trailed off. Wait. Oh, that's why they were mad at All Might. Because of how he reacted that night. Damn it. None of that was his fault. There's no way All Might could have known he was so unstable. And he was right anyway. He wouldn't have gotten this far without a quirk. He would have been dead the first week of classes at the USJ. You guys are mad at him because of that. It wasn't his fault. He didn't know that. No, Izuku, it was his fault. He was the adult and he handled the situation beyond poorly. If he wasn't the number one hero, he could have gotten his license revoked because of how poorly he handled that. But that's beside the point. Please continue. Eraser snapped. No, kid, I'm not arguing with you on this. Eraser stated in a tone that left no room for debate. Cho, calm down. You're right, but he's already freaked out. Mike chided softly. Eraser took a moment to close his eyes and take a deep breath before speaking again. Sorry. I'm just frustrated, but not at you. Please continue. He glanced at Mike again and waited for them to nod before he spoke again. He, gave me his number so I could let him know my decision. And, obviously I said yes, but he wanted to make sure I was strong enough to receive it. So he set up a training schedule for me. That's when I started taking more breaks from patrol because it was a lot. He had me clean up the dumping grounds at Dagobah Beach, but I got ahead of his schedule pretty quick because I was already in shape from patrolling, which he didn't know. Anyway, I got his quirk in November, and we spent the rest of the time up until the entrance exam training with it. And you guys know the rest? He trailed off. Both of them took a moment to think on what he said, and Eraser had started subtly chewing at the inside of his lip. He looked uncomfortable. He was tense. Mike noticed it too, but they seemed to know more than Izuku did, if the conversation via eye contact between the two of them was anything to go by. After a tense moment, Eraser turned his attention back to him. I need to apologize to you, kid. Things got out of hand with Yagi. My anger got the best of me, and I said things that I shouldn't have. Izuku did not like where this was going. I told him that I found you the night you met him, where I found you that night, and, well, he had questions. I didn't give him any answers, and I told him to just drop it, but I don't know if he will. He might ask you, and you can tell him if you want, or one of us can tell him. I talked to Nedzu, and he said it was all right to let him in the loop. I'm sorry. It was out of line, and it wasn't my place to tell him anything. His hands were now fisted into Kimchi's fur, and she let out a small burp of protest. He let go immediately and apologized as he smoothed down her ruffled feathers, but she didn't seem to care at all because she just started purring when he brushed her fur back into place. He tried to focus on her calm purring and not the anger and fear currently tearing through his mind like a bull in a china shop. All Might knew. He knew he was a broken, weak little Deku. So much for having the heart of a hero. He's going to realize what a huge mistake he made in picking him. And he's going to have to explain how he lied to him even more than he already knew. He's going to find out that he was just a fractured amalgamation of personalities held together with bone-crushing fear and glitter glue. Suddenly Mike was knelt down in front of him with a hand on his arm. Startled out of his thoughts, he looked up to see Eraser, who was leaning forward and looking awfully guilty. He didn't like that look on his face. He was mad, but seeing him upset was worse. He wanted to tell him it was okay, to not worry about it. But he couldn't get the words out. So he signed, "It's okay." Eraser shook his head and huffed out a humorless laugh. "No, kid, it's not okay. I know you don't want me to feel bad, but I screwed up, plain and simple. This is on me, and I'm sorry. It's up to you where you want to go from here, though." Izuku took a moment to think about that. He didn't really want anyone to know anything. If he had his way, he would still be living in the brewery. But he wasn't. And things were better now, right? He was terrified every day that someone was going to rip the rug out from under his feet, but that was because things were better now. Along with the paralyzing fear and dread he had each time one of his secrets was pried out from between his clenched fingers, there was the barest sense of relief. Relief that he didn't have to lie about it anymore. Relief that they still hadn't left him, not yet at least. They knew he was a null now. They must know, right? But they were still here. Maybe they hadn't made the connections under all the shock. He wanted to ask. It was the last secret he had kept from them. Well, not the last, but the last big one. The fear he had been doing his best to ignore all day was bubbling in his gut. They had to know, right? They weren't stupid. They could connect the dots. And he wanted that relief so badly. He wanted them to tell him that they still wanted him here, even if he was, at his core, still a null. He needed to hear it, even if they didn't mean it. "Baby, what's the matter?" Mike asked as they gently wiped a tear off his cheek. He didn't even realize he'd started crying. God, he was so pathetic. He just needed to get this over with. Rip the Band-Aid off. "You guys know you don't care?" He fumbled out inelegantly. That wasn't even a sentence. That was nothing. He needed to pull himself together. "Don't care about what, sweetheart?" Mike asked gently. He didn't want to say it. If they didn't know, he'd wanted to bask in their ignorance for as long as he could. Kami! He didn't want to say it, but he had to know. He had to get this over with. "That I'm a null?" He finally choked out. The horrified look on Mike's face made him want to jump off the balcony, and Eraser looked similarly disgusted. Oh, hell! He didn't want to hear this. He couldn't watch. He couldn't. He couldn't. He couldn't. Hands gently placed themselves on either side of his face and forced his attention towards Mike. He was talking. Shit. What was he saying? He looked so serious. He'd never seen him so stern. He needed to listen, but his head was full of static. "Izuku? Izuku, can you hear me?" He finally caught a coherent string of words, so he nodded quickly and forced himself to focus on them. Mike's hands dropped from his face and held Izuku's hands as he continued. "Good. That's good. We're not mad at you, okay? We don't care that you weren't born with a quirk. Sho and I were talking earlier about how impressed we were that you did everything you did as Ivy without a quirk. You are absolutely remarkable, Izuku, but I don't want to hear you call yourself that ever again. It's not a nice word. No one should be called that," they said as they looked him dead in the eye. They sounded sincere. They sounded like they meant it. He was searching their face for any hint that they were lying, but he couldn't find it. They weren't lying? How, how could, how? He looked up at Eraser. He still looked upset, but he hadn't said anything. His brow was furrowed, and he was chewing on the inside of his lip again. Was he mad? Did he think the same? The desperation must have shown on his face enough for Mike to pick up on it, because he prompted his husband. Right, Sho? Yes, we don't care that you were quirkless. I'm sorry. I'm just angry that any of this happened, he explained. But I'm not angry with you, Izuku, he added quickly. The words hardly had time to leave Eraser's mouth before Izuku fell apart. He wrenched his hands out of the gentle hold Mike had on them and buried his face as he sobbed. They didn't care. They didn't care. They didn't care? How could they not care? He was a null, unevolved, geneless, less than. How could they not care? They probably hadn't handled that as well as they could have, but Shota didn't think that either of them were ready for the kid to so casually call himself a slur in their living room. He said it with such shame and confidence at the same time, like he knew for a fact that that was what he was, like he was more assured that that was all he would ever be than he was about anything else. He knew his self-esteem was deplorable at best, but hearing it stated so bluntly was jarring. Shota hated that word. He always did. It was so disgusting. It was an awful word to describe a human being. Definition: null. Adjective: 1. Without value, effect, consequence, or significance. 2. Being or amounting to nothing. Nil. Lacking. Non-existent. It made him sick to think that Izuku really believed that about himself. It made him sick to think that anyone could believe that about him, about anyone. Shota did his best to assure him that he wasn't mad at him, that he didn't care about his quirk, or lack thereof, but he immediately burst into tears. Jeez, can he not get through one conversation without screwing it up royally? Izuku was babbling out denials through his tears. There's no way you don't care. Everyone cared. Everyone. They all hated me. Why are you different? How can you be different? Each fractured off word Shota had to string into a coherent sentence filled him with murderous rage. He wanted to beat anyone who had ever made Izuku feel like he deserved any of this to a bloody pulp. He could tell Zashi felt the same way by the tension in his shoulders, but he was doing his best to calm Izuku down and assure him that they were telling the truth. The kid pulled himself together, but he still wasn't having it. He had stopped denying Zashi's claims, but Shota could see in his eyes that he didn't believe them. He needed him to believe them, but the kid was shutting down. He was still upset. It was clear as day that he was still upset, but he was just holding it in so that they wouldn't have to deal with his breakdown. Damn it to hell. He already started this. In for a penny, in for a pound. Kid, you don't need me to tell you that you have drawn the worst lot in life. Your luck is absolute shit on a good day. Why is it so hard to believe that you were unlucky enough to be surrounded by Mustafa's minority of quirkish a-holes? He asked. Shota! Zashi admonished his brashness, but didn't disagree. The kid stilled his fidgeting at that before shaking his head, trying to deny it again. He looked unsure about it, though. Izuku, if what happened to you happened to another quirkless kid, would you tell them that they deserved it? He pushed. That question made him still entirely. His slightly erratic breathing stopped altogether, and his brow furrowed as he stared at his lap. Shota really hoped he got through to him and didn't just push him too far. Izuku didn't want to believe them, because the longer he thought about it, the angrier he became. He didn't deserve it? He didn't deserve it? Then why did it happen? Why did he have to live through it? Why did everyone he had ever reached out to bat his hand away and beat him down until he stopped trying altogether? If he didn't deserve it, why didn't anyone help? Shinso said the same thing. They could have helped. They would have helped. All he had to do was ask. This whole time, he didn't have to be alone. His hands were clenched into shaking fists, and the room blurred through the tears in his eyes. Mike was still knelt in front of him. He wanted to push him away. He wanted to scream and tear out his hair. They had to be lying. They had to be lying. They had to. They had to. They had to. They had to. They had. It couldn't just be bad luck. It couldn't have been senseless. It couldn't. There had to be a reason. He was so angry he felt dizzy with it. His hands were clenched into shaking fists in his lap, and Mike was still knelt down in front of him. He wanted them to go away, to leave him alone. But he couldn't speak past his gritted teeth, and he couldn't unfurl his fists even if he wanted to. He did his best to calmly scoot away from them until he had enough room to stand. Once he did, he walked away from the living room to the Genkan, making sure to pull his shoes on before going to leave. He could see both Mike and Eraser had followed him. Mike was saying something, likely trying to get him to stay, but Eraser put a hand on their shoulder to stop them and stepped forward. He held out his hand like he was asking for something. He was speaking, but Izuku couldn't make out the words. He needed to get out of here. Eventually, Izuku caught the word phone, so he dug into his pocket. Were they taking his phone away? Whatever, he didn't care. He handed it over and went to leave, but Eraser grabbed his shoulder with his left hand while he fiddled with the phone in his right. After a second, he handed it back, screen facing Izuku. It was opened up to settings, and the display showed that location sharing had been set up with Mike and Eraser. He didn't care that he was storming out like a child for the second time today. He just wanted to know where he was in case something happened. They just wanted him to be safe. The realization made him want to drop to his knees and sob as much as it fueled the fire of his rage. They just wanted him to be safe. They didn't care. They didn't care. How could they not care? Why weren't they mad? Why weren't they disgusted? Why weren't they kicking him out? Why didn't they care? He was geneless, unevolved. He was quirkless. Tears obscured his vision again as he stuffed his phone back into his pocket and left. End of chapter.